All right, now it's time for what I promised all of you. The story from last week from a client meeting. Perspective. Client meeting.
Perspective.
Turned not perspective.
A client of one of our partners.
Yep. So let's backfill the story, okay? Partner has a client who has a solo K. That is solo 401k, if you couldn't correlate those two things. And wanted,
commonly individual 401k is common on some of those sites too.
So she asked him, "Hey, do you guys do TPA services?" And
what's TPA?
Was it
third party administrator?
Yeah. And he's like, "No." And someone else, this other person, said that your accounting firm, you most accounting firms do TPAs. That's inaccurate. TPAs are vastly different than tax planning firms. I just want everyone to know that. So he's like, "Hey, I don't think we do, but my partner deals with all the wealth. Let's have a meeting. We'll go through it with him." So I'm CC'd on the email. We set up a time. Client's on it, who I think is her associate's on it. Partner and I walk into the meeting, really excited, ready to go. She's there. Meet her. And then we're sitting there for a little bit. Who I deemed associate comes in late, by the way. Sits down and we're like, okay, you guys got questions, I got answers, so let's get to it. Associate asks, do we do TPA services? And I said, no. And really for solo Ks, you really don't need them because the custodian takes care of a lot of that stuff. A Schwab, who we clear through. I have done a ton with TD, obviously Fidelity. You can do those. And he's like, well, we use IB, Interactive Brokers. Now I know he's an advisor. Now I have already clarified that now in my brain he's an advisor.
And to clarify, Interactive Brokers does not offer TPA services for those, correct?
They don't do much in regards to the self-employed retirement.
And I knew that answer, but...
Yes, you did. Because we tried that, right?
Yeah.
So I go on to say, hey, we left IB for Schwab a lot for this reason. Also because Interactive Brokers is designed for traders and, doing more of the hedge fund trading.
It's great for fund.
As opposed to your normal solo Ks and normal investing, right? We know on the backside that IB charges for trading costs, whereas Schwab and the rest of them do not. So in my mind, I'm going, well, that's silly. Anyways, so I say we do that transition and that Schwab and all of them can take care of it. Client's like, well, why haven't we? And he's like, well, I've been trying to stick it at IB because it's easier for us to pull our fees.
Don't make me laugh.
He's talking to his client saying, I'm staying at IB, or we're trying to focus everything on IB because it's easier for us to automatically pull our fees from you. So now I'm like, do you dive into this? Do you make it a thing, or do you passively do it? She's not my client. She has no signed docs by me. I'm not obligated to anything. So I just went to iterate and said, well, IB is good for a lot of things. Trading, like we've already talked about. However, if you went to Schwab, you could easily set that account up. We can get it done in 48 hours, and pick investments and be off and running, right? And then when you are working with our partner and you need a contribution or whatever, it's very easy to just pull that money in, put it in the profit share or your employee piece, and move on. So now he's backpedaling, saying, oh, yeah, we can do that, Schwab. We have a couple of Schwab accounts. I just, Schwab, it's a lot more difficult to pull your fees. So now I'm like, well.
So it's back to the fees.
Back to the fees. So now I'm like, it's not really that hard to do. Now, locally, internally, we can do that, but it's really not that hard. You just have to manually do it every month. Okay? It's not that hard. But also, Schwab is a lot better for the client. And he's like, yeah, Schwab has a way better interface. It's easier to set up applications, which we do know that.
Yes, absolutely. We know that.
Fact. Oh, my Lord. So he admits that IB's better Schwab's better for the client, but IB's easier for pulling his fees. And I am just dumbfounded. So we end the meeting, He leaves, and now she has some health insurance questions. So we answer the health insurance, going to help her through that. And at the end, she's like, well, what do you guys do? And I just explained to her basically, everything. We do your family
High
office.
level. Yeah.
We pay your bills. Really, everything that you need done is what we're going to get done. And for example, the conversation today, you would never have had to have a meeting with someone else. We would have, if we didn't know the answer, we'd figure it out and bring in the expert and get it done. With health insurance, same thing. We're going to be able to do all of that. Obviously, you work with our partner, so all of that stuff's really easy. It's all about you. And she said, okay, and then left. And so then I decided the next day to go to Twitter and just tell every advisor I possibly can of how terrible of a situation that is, one, for the client, and two, for an advisor who is focused solely on the client's best interest. And I'm not meaning in the actual fiduciary standpoint, literally as a person. Like legally, I care about you and your best interest. Morally and ethically, we do as well. To be in that situation, someone in our, in our industry who is essentially taking advantage of that client, because one, IB is not as good for the interface, setting up accounts, and is more expensive trading than it is in the others because of trading fees. And that's just the three that I found in that meeting. What else is going on?
That's just awkward for that client to sit there. How you're uncomfortable in that situation because you're directly talking about your money leaving your hands to come into my hands directly. It's always an elephant in a room in any meeting that you have with your advisors, the costs associated with this. And you're acknowledging that this place is easier for me to take those costs from you. Easier for that money to leave your pocket and get into mine.
That's why that's why you're not at Schwab.
Well, I think, Black Mammoth's values, one of them is transparency. And I think, in that meeting, and then what we do with clients is we lay it out so they know what's happening and they understand it, and we educate them so they can make the right choices. So I think that's an important part of the piece that may be missing there.
Absolutely. And it's missing in our entire industry. Mm-hmm. And yes, this was, a middle-aged, older white guy. So, every stereotype you could throw out basically happened. She was a female, older white male advisor, actual advisor, not planner. It was just like the most stereotypical thing. And so that's why I tweeted it. And then we had a conversation about it in Females in Finance group. And then they started telling their stories of it happening all the time in 401k space, in all of these areas. And someone asked the question on Twitter to me of, it seems like a lack or an inability of education. And I said, you're absolutely right, because it's on us to educate our clients. Well, if there's only a few, in relatively speaking, if only 30% of the advisors out there are actually doing what's right and doing their correct education, and I actually mean advisors, not planners, they're doing that education, well, that means 70% of people out there are not getting it. And they're now getting not fed this information, which is going to overtake the people who are educated, because they're going to be like, either going to make them feel dumb, or what they're saying is, no, my advisor takes care of me, and they are doing the situation. So I decided to blast it out there. We're talking about it now. This will launch as its own thing because of the importance of calling that out. I think when you talk about big topics in life, people just keep getting away with things because no one stands up and talks about it. And that goes from top to bottom.
Yeah. And I think how you handled it in that situation, you could have just put him on blast right in front of his client, right?
I wanted to.
But what we just talked about with Cheryl is not attacking the other people in our industry. That client, if you put her advisor on blast in front of her, makes her feel like she did something wrong by choosing that guy.
Right.
And it wasn't necessarily her wrong. Maybe it wasn't the right person for her, but she did something very, very good by having an advisor or having somebody in her corner. And if you would have just come at that guy and right in front of her face, it would have made her probably feel more awkward and say, well, I made a bad decision. I don't know that I want to work with an advisor again.
Yeah.
And she would have clammed up.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. So then you just put your foot in your mouth and do this and educate them. And, come tax season, Brian's going to bring it back up. I also told Brian, I said, if that advisor doesn't get it done within this week, tell her we'll get it done and we'll just knock it out for her because of the importance of it. So that's something that's a little different for us, is that would be us just doing it for Brian in the tax purposes. I mean, that's doing what's best for the client, and that's like, do we think we expect to get much out of that? No, but if she needs that done, we'll send contracts. We'll get it all done in time because of how important it is for the overall bigger picture.
Yeah.
And even if the advisor took it back later, I really wouldn't care. I just want to make sure that's done. And that's where we're at. So that's who we're about. So if you see us around, you can tell stories about us, but we're going to tell stories too. And I'm going to do a segment. We're going to do a segment. The more stories we hear from other advisors who maybe don't want to or cannot speak up. And I mean that because of compliance. If they're at a BD, a wirehouse, something like that, they're bound a lot harder than us, clearly. So other advisors out there, if you have stories that you want out there and help educate people, please let us know. We'll be the ones to take it. I mean, we'll just tell your story how it is, give some feedback, and have a good conversation about it.
We just ended our end of the year episode saying, you have a voice. Let's use it.
Let's use it.
Yeah, use it for good. And I think, you put it out there and you found people willing to share their stories. So there's a lot of stories out there to share. So, and
the public doesn't know our stories.
Right.
I know we've been doing trying to do summaries of articles a lot more to get out there. You know what's tough about that I found is the fact that they don't have access to those articles as much. Wait a minute.
Password.
In our industry, we have documents and research and all this stuff that would only go to helping clients and educate them. But when an advisor has access, which we have to pay for, and then wants to share it to help educate people, they can't actually read that article unless they pay for it.
Yeah, I think it's a big problem. I mean, we're getting access to information. We have to pay for that access. And then we want to share that information. We can't share it because then they need to actually sign up, pay. They can see the first 2 lines of the paragraph or whatever. But yeah, I think for general public information, I mean, this is, people need to be educated. People need to know what's out there. And it's behind lock and key. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I know at some of those websites that I'm looking at articles or different stuff on in the past where it's okay, I know that I can only read 2 lines of this article because I just did it 2 days ago or just did it yesterday. I'm just going to go right past that almost every single time, as whether it's sports that I love to read about or different stuff like that. Well, I can't read this, so I'm just going to scroll past that and try and find it in some other capacity.
Yeah. And now we might get some feedback of, well, that's for advisor only. Why would anything in our industry have to be advisor eyes only?
Especially if it's educational based, especially in that case.
I'm trying to think of why would anything that we deal with have to be advisor only? Now I could see how a certain trade, you get to trading secrets and proprietary stuff. I get that, but generic research information should be made available. Even if they just could print off the article and go to their planner advisor and be like, what does this mean? And are we doing this? Give them some power in that regard.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I mean, I think that's why social media short bites are taking off, because it's open access to anybody, right? Yeah. So people are sharing stories, information on TikTok, whatever social media platform, and it's accessible, and our industry is putting them a wall up, and it's not accessible.
For sure.
The preceding program was sponsored by Black Mammoth. Any awards, rankings, or recognition by unaffiliated third parties or publications are in no way indicative of the advisor's future performance or any individual client's investment success. No award, ranking, or recognition should be construed as a current or past endorsement of Black Mammoth. Information regarding specific awards, rankings, or recognitions is available on the Black Mammoth website, www.blackmammoth.com. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. Investment strategies such as asset allocation, diversification, or rebalancing do not assure or guarantee better performance and cannot eliminate the risk of investment losses. There are no guarantees that a portfolio employing these or any other strategy will outperform a portfolio that does not engage in such strategies. This broadcast should not be construed by any client or prospective client as a solicitation to affect or attempt to affect transactions and securities or the rendering of personalized investment advice due to various factors, including changing market conditions. The information discussed in this broadcast may no longer be reflective of current positions or recommendations. While information presented is believed to be factual and up-to-date, Black Mammoth do not guarantee its accuracy, and it should not be regarded as a complete analysis of the subjects discussed. The tax and estate planning information discussed is general in nature and is provided for informational purposes only and should not be construed as legal or tax advice. Listeners should consult an attorney or tax professional regarding their specific legal or tax situation. Past performance is not indicative of future results.